Good morning and welcome to our webinar on leadership and managing people. We're so excited to have you here. My name is Michelle Burton. I am the principal owner for CoreTech Revolution. I have over 20 years of healthcare and technology experience. CoreTech's been in business for about 15 years, working primarily with healthcare and technology organizations of all sizes, and we're super excited to be here with you today to share some of our experiences that might benefit you and help bring your organization to the next level. I would like to introduce you to Jane Niederberger. She is also an experienced healthcare technology executive with over 30 years of experience. She has been working with the CoreTech team for several years now to help partner with us on strategy and bringing our healthcare organizations to the next level as well. So today, Jane is going to be kicking off our second webinar, focusing primarily on managing your greatest resource, which is people. If you have questions throughout the webinar today, please feel free to put them in the chat window and we will address them as we're going through the webinar. Thank you so much. Jane?
Good morning. Thank you for joining us today. We're excited to have you here. Today we're going to talk about people being our greatest resource and our greatest expense. So how do we properly lead them? By leading and managing more effectively, you as leaders will have happier employees, resulting in better productivity and improved client relationships. Today you'll learn how to be a stronger leader and a manager as we go through some of these scenarios. So leaders set the vision and a path for achievement, and then they let people go. So let's talk about how do you do that confidently. First and foremost, you delegate wisely. We want to stretch people with the assignments that we give them, but we don't want them to fall off the cliff. It's okay for people to stumble. That's how they're going to learn. So you have to think about which opportunities are the best ones for them to gain their wings and to learn a little bit. An example of this is when I first joined a technology organization. I had worked in healthcare my entire career and knew healthcare operations, medical records, all of that side of the work. But I switched to the technology organization, and within 2 months, I had a major technical implementation of an updated medical record system that linked our health centers to the hospitals. In my mind, I'm thinking, no big deal. Nobody would have given me this if they didn't think I could do it. That was my first mistake. As we went through with that implementation, there were many stumbles along the way around things that didn't go right, a team that didn't have backup plans, customers that weren't as ready as we should have got them to be on the other end. And so at the end of it, my boss and I had to sit down. I thought I was walking into her office to be fired. And part of me was, had my tail between my legs. And the other part of me was angry that she had set me up for something like this to look like an idiot, being fairly new on the job. And the conversation she and I had has stuck with me my entire life. She asked me what I learned, what I would do differently. Did I have the right team in place? What skills did I now need to be able to do this again? And then she said, okay, go take care of all that. I'll look forward to the next one. Blew me away because she was somebody who had my back, didn't feel like it at the time. But when you looked at it afterwards, she had set me up in a way that I was going to be that much stronger. So when you talk about delegating, think about that. I don't know that I would have given somebody a mission critical setup like that to do, but there are examples when you can give your team opportunities to do something. They won't do it like you, but they'll learn so much more by doing it themselves and stumbling. At CoreTech, we've also been hired by clients, an East Coast health plan, to help people with this. One healthcare company brought me in for a big project with the underlying goal of being the coach, being the safety net for that manager who was going to be leading a major project. And that way I could be whispering in their ear, have you done that? Have you thought about this? Have you prepped this person? So we were getting the work done. I was also helping her with the soft skills. And to the local manager who was delivering the product, I was seen as safe. I wasn't her boss. So she could confide in me. I'm scared. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know if this is the right person. And we could talk that through and make it successful. So there's another way, another tool for you to use as you're working with your team on trying to let them grow legs underneath them. Setting goals is very important. People need to know where they're going and when they've arrived. Communication. We talk about communication all the time. And probably the biggest thing in communication is listen. Ask questions. Provide alternatives, not necessarily all the solutions. And share your expectations of what you want out of them. Michelle has a great example of failing fast.
Yeah, thanks, Jane. So, one of the things I tell my team and the people I work with all the time is that it's okay to fail, right? You have to ask questions of your team. You have to work with folks to understand what's going on, but not everybody is an expert in every area. And so I learned early on in my career, and have just carried this with me throughout, is just, if you're going to fail fast, learn from it, course correct, and try again. And that is part of the experience, we bring forward as we work with our clients and customers and our team inside CoreTech on a regular basis. And it just allows people to feel really empowered, so that they feel like it's okay if I fail. I don't have to know everything. And I'm going to take that failure, I'm going to learn from it, and I'm going to apply it to my next attempt so that I can do better, be better, or achieve better results.
Another thing to consider is making time for employees. People need to know that we're all there for them as leaders and managers. There's always formal times like one-on-ones, but there's also informal office hours. Keeping your door open and looking inviting, not growling at them when they walk past. Walking through the hallways, talking to people, or even working in an open space periodically. I used to travel quite a bit when I was the CIO at Anthem. We had people in many, many different states. And I was not able to meet with everybody. I wouldn't even know who would want to talk to me. Most didn't necessarily. But I would always find a table or a chair in an open space and do whatever work I could there, knowing that people felt very comfortable coming up. Some would just say, hi, what's new? How are the kids? Others would say, remember that project we did? It's been bugging me. Can we talk about it? So you get all kinds of things that aren't even on your radar by just making yourself available to people. Recognize achievements. Celebrate the big things and the little things. One of the things that in the past I've found extremely effective is picking up the phone, calling people, and thanking them for work they did. When you're in the technology world, there's a lot of weekend, night, holiday work behind the scenes by your infrastructure folks that nobody sees, nobody wants to know about. Everybody just wants to know that it goes well. And oftentimes my staff didn't think I had a clue that they were even doing that. So what I would do is after the installation, I'd get a list of names from the managers of who worked over the weekend, the holiday, what have you. And I'd pick up the phone and I'd thank them. I'd ask about their family. I'd ask, how are they catching up to make up on time? But the fact that I called them personally, that I knew who they were, and I knew that they were there that weekend working, went further than any bonus or any other reward I could have given them. And the reason why I know that is my managers kept giving me that feedback with, you can't believe the smiles on their face. So don't underestimate the little things and how far they can go in terms of recognizing your employees and the work that they're doing. Think about lasting solutions. Think long-term versus short-term. There's a place for short-term solutions, but always think about how it plays into the longer term also. And lastly, don't take it all too seriously. If we don't laugh at ourselves as managers and leaders and lighten things up, maybe nobody else will. And then that's not going to feel very fun. It's not going to be a fun place to work. If we can laugh at ourselves, we create a culture where other people will do the same. And it's just a healthier culture. And it goes back to what Michelle said about it's okay to fail or to stumble, because let's just move on. So if you joined our webinar last week, or any of them, you've heard us talking about the Core Values Index. And we know that several of you took the time to get online and use this tool to get a high-level profile of who you are and where your strengths are. So while we're not going into the Core Values Index during this webinar, learning about your leadership style is going to be really helpful to you in terms of understanding how to manage and work with different personalities. If you haven't done it, just a plug, the link is still there on our webinar page, and we would encourage you to do it. The insight into your values index will give you more intelligence as to how you naturally gravitate towards leading and working with others. And I'll also tell you where your weaker spots are. So if you look at that red box, the builder, and I'm going to go through this extremely quickly. I'm not doing it justice, but just to give you a smattering of how it can help. The builder is a decide and do type of person. This is me. This fits me to a T. The cornerstone is power. And it's not power like we traditionally think about it. It's my primary driver is supported by a strong faith that I know what to do. I know that my actions are for the good. And I have faith that once I create change, I'll know what to do next. It'll just come to me. So I rely on the strategies of this value set, even when they might not be the most effective. And that's my weakness, is that I have that confidence and that power that I got it, don't worry about it, I got it. When I may need to be doing a little bit more dive down into details and facts, etc. The merchant is a talk and listen type person. The cornerstone is love. And the primary driver is to build and sustain relationships. This is Michelle. Michelle, do you want to talk about what drives you?
Yeah, absolutely. So as Jane already mentioned, my primary driver is love and building relationships. And as part of that, what goes along with it is truth. And so what I'm always looking for as a merchant, or what my areas of strength are, is a constant understanding. I want to work with, whether it be my clients or my team or folks on a project I'm working on, I want to understand what's inspiring to them, where their visions are, and where the truth lies, to try and figure out how to best build a path forward, and just building that relationship to move forward. Now, sometimes, though, that's not always the best approach, as Jane mentioned. That can sometimes be also a weakness, because you can't have connection, you can't have that relationship with everyone you work for. So it's a challenge at times, but I like to listen to my surroundings. I like to hear what's going on, and then I like to move forward in my relationships with people and projects, and just genuinely find the best path forward.
The purple box is the innovator, and their core value value is wisdom. They see the way things are, and they're constantly assessing and solving. They remain empathetic and curious of the behavior and emotions of others. So they're always looking at different solutions, different ways to approach things. If you look at the banker, the core value there is knowledge. And they want facts. They read and analyze, read and analyze, read and analyze. They're catalyzed by justice, which is equity of access, accountability, compensation, opportunity. It's probably as different from the builder as you could possibly be. Pretty different from the merchant also. The reason why this is important, so Michelle and I are both builders and merchants, and we're strong in the other areas. So Michelle is also strong in builder, and I'm also strong in merchant. So when we need constructive feedback on products and deliverables, we have to go find innovators and bankers because they don't view the world the same way we do. And their input is extremely on point and helpful to us because it makes us look at a view that is completely different than either one of us would do on our own. So that's the value at a very, very, very high level of the core values index. Think about taking it just so you see what your different balances are and how you relate to your different employees. Because some of you probably have people who are very opposite you. And you need to figure out what is the best way to tap into them, to inspire them and lead them. As we talk about characteristics of good leadership, think about a great leader that you worked with. A really, really good one. Would you follow them to another department or company? That means quitting what you're doing or packing up your family and moving away. And why would you do it? What is it about them that inspires you to say, what the heck? I think it's worth it. One of the things that's probably different about them is they have embraced the role of leader. They truly enjoy leading and inspiring people. They get excited about it, they get passionate about it, and therefore they're really, really good at doing it. I think I have shared in past webinars that I have followed a CIO from Boston. She became the CIO for Anthem, and my family and I packed up our roots in Boston and moved to Cincinnati. Nobody in my family had ever done that. We didn't know a soul in the Midwest. It was the scariest thing I've ever done. But she had provided such an exciting vision of what could be and how we could do great things at Anthem. She made me feel extremely valuable, like she couldn't do it without me, and I needed to be there and I needed to be part of it. And she had more respect and concern for me than I had in my current work environment. So that was kind of a no-brainer for me. And last but not least, it was a growing opportunity. Michelle, I believe you have an example also.
Yeah, so early on in my career, before I was a project manager in a faraway place, I worked for this wonderful CIO. She was by far and away one of the most amazing people I've ever worked for. And for whatever reason at the time, she really saw something in me that inspired her. And as a result, without me asking her to do this, she really just took me under her wing, and she put me in project management roles without the official title. She said, I think you can do this, Michelle, and this is what I need you to do, and I need you to manage this project. And because she had such a deep faith in me, I had a deep confidence in myself as a result. And it is really what, without me ever having thought about it before, inspired me to go into the field of project management a really long time ago. And as a result of that, I got my first project management role within that organization and moved on to manage other projects. And now here I am today helping other people build their teams and manage projects and their organizations effectively. But one of the things that I have carried forward with me as a result of that interaction with her is simply the ability to, I'm always looking for that light in someone, right? Like, what is it that I think they'd be really good at that they don't necessarily see themselves? And how can I cultivate that to show them a greater, more effective, more powerful version of themselves and lead them into something different than what they might be doing today? And I just have a really great debt of gratitude for her for instilling that in me. And it was just a really wonderful experience that obviously had a very significant impact on me.
So when we talk about characteristics of good leadership, you're hearing themes here. They're choosing to lead. They're the person that we want to follow, whether it's in a work project, a move, achieving a vision. They inspire us to do things that we never thought we could do, make people feel important and appreciated. Live your values. We've talked, and we will continue to talk about walking the talk, and there'll be more on that in a little bit. So what other tools and other things are necessary for us to gain in our toolkit to be a good leadership? Because leaders set the pace through expectations and example. And leaders impact everyone and need to be very aware of how they're perceived. Now, you may have heard my example before. I've used it ad nauseum about not smiling when I walk through the hallways at Anthem and how I got the feedback that I was seen as standoffish. Well, that insight has stayed with me. And as a result, it's expanded. Now I think about, where am I? What situation am I in? What am I projecting when I'm around others? Sometimes I'm just not happy and I'm grumpy. But I know that I'm in a place where people need to see smiling happiness, confidence. Other times I'm not happy and I'm grumpy, and I have every right to be because a deliverable was missed or somebody didn't do what they needed to do. And so that's okay to show that, as long as that's the takeaway that you want to leave people with. So the lesson here is be aware of yourself. Awareness of oneself isn't always easy. And sometimes you can't see it. So get trusted advisors, use self-development, use things like the CVI tool, and get usable feedback. Because if you can't see your blind spots, I can guarantee everybody else around you can. Just ask them, they'll tell you. But what we need to do is people that you trust and who will share it with you in a way that there's something you can do. Because you impact everyone subordinate to your position. So you need to be thinking that through. So the tools we have here at CoreTech can also assist in this area. As I mentioned, CVI is just one of several tools. And so don't hesitate to call on us if this is an area you need help in. It's not easy, and it's ongoing. More characteristics of good leadership include honesty and ethical behavior, sense of humor, commitment, positive attitude, creativity, and intuition. Remember, you are always being watched. People interpret our actions through their eyes and not necessarily your reality. Again, remember the different perspectives from the CVI grid. So if I'm let's burn down the barn and go straight ahead and I know what to do, I've got those bankers thinking, she is freaking clueless. Has she looked at the spreadsheets? Has she looked at the analysis? Does she know where she's going? Always do the right thing. My mother would always tell us growing up, the right thing isn't always the easy thing. So if you mess up, and you will, own it and make it right. I I had a extremely humbling experience when I was running technology at Anthem. One day, my email blew up, completely went away. And I called the woman in charge. I think at the time we were on Lotus Notes or some old ancient system. And I reamed her up one side and down the other that I didn't know what was going on and this was unacceptable and how were people supposed to work and blah, 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 blah. I was horrible. An hour or so later, I realized that I had done something. I had clicked some buttons or moved something somewhere and all my email came back. And I was horrified. I was more embarrassed than I would ever be. And I really just wanted to kind of ignore it and let it go away and pretend it never happened. But again, my mother's words were coming to my head about, the right thing isn't always the easy thing. So I knew she had a staff meeting that afternoon, ran out, bought cookies, brownies, you name it, whatever food we like to eat at Anthem, and walked into her staff meeting. I walked in the door and the look on the woman's face said it all. She was both angry at me and I think she was afraid I was going to do something dramatic again. And I don't blame her. I behaved poorly. And so I apologized to her in front of her entire team. I didn't know what else to do. And as I said, it was one of the most humbling experiences. I'm sure she appreciated it. It was nothing compared to what I had done with her. So I always think twice now before I have a major meltdown on somebody else. I think 2 and 3 and 4 times now. There's also an example where we were hired at CoreTech and one of our clients hired us to come in and help with a variety of processes. And in the process, what I found out is the CEO was undermining her managers. Certain employees went around the managers when they didn't like what their manager told them to do, and they went right to the CEO and appealed to her. And so when I brought it up to the CEO that, they're playing you. They're like kids. Let's go ask mom, and we don't like mom's answer, so let's go ask dad. She just looked at me and laughed and said, well, I'm the CEO. It's not a big deal. So then we talked through the implications about, well, everybody else is watching. And if everybody knows that that's how you're going to play the game, everybody else is going to start playing that game. And then why do you need managers? So as she thought about it, she agreed, fixed the solution by apologizing to the managers and working out better avenues to get things done. And then when people would come to her in the future, she reacted differently by sending them to managers or whatever. So sometimes making those shifts can be a little bit challenging. Have a sense of humor. Don't take yourself too seriously. The best example I have for this, at the risk of embarrassing her, is Michelle, who's on the phone here. I have worked with Michelle in a variety of different situations where I have been her direct manager, I have hired her as a consultant, I've worked shoulder to shoulder with her, or I've worked for her. And in every single one of those scenarios, Michelle is Michelle. And she can deliver the absolute worst message in the best way. She can tell you the wheels are falling off the bus, but she comes in and she does it with confidence and a smile and kind of lightens it with jokes along the way if she's sensing that needs to happen. And the point in all that is you hear the message. You may not like it, but you hear it. She knows how to deliver it with a sense of humor and a smile in her voice that makes it very palatable. Another characteristic is commitment. Follow through on what you started, even when the going gets tough. The weak ones pull out when the going gets tough. The hardy leaders stay there. That's how you learn. It's not fun, but somebody's got to get us through it. So take the reins and make it happen. Positive attitude is not the same as Susie Sunshine, but have a hopeful, can-do attitude. So again, I'm not talking cheerleader pom-poms jumping on the sidelines, but help people look at things from different angles. With, okay, you can't get it done that way. How about this way? How about that way? Pull in those people who are different kinds of thinkers that we looked at on the CVI chart and come up with different ways of solving problems. But it's always a can do. We can solve this problem. Creativity, as we said, with positive attitudes, is finding different ways to get things done. Finding different solutions, finding different ways to have people work together. Intuition, this is an important one that I think is oftentimes overlooked. Trust yourself. Trust your gut. If your gut is telling you something, there's something there. You may not have it pinned down exactly, but there's something there. We were working at one client and we were brought in to look at different processes and help with improvement. And when you looked at things right off the bat, things looked okay. But the more time I spent there, something wasn't right and I couldn't quite put my finger on it. And finally, I figured out the real issue was there was a person there who saying all the right things, doing all the right things, telling me what she thought I wanted to hear. And then she'd walk away and kind of stir the pot, create trouble, start rumors. And so by knowing in my gut that things weren't right, I started digging and asking different questions with, what am I missing? What should I be asking that I don't know to ask? And so we figured out what the real issues were. And CoreTech was able to recommend long-term changes to the company that were very effective. So again, listen to your gut as a leader. You've gained that experience over time. Trust it. So lead by example and inspire your team. Here's some ways to do it. Walk the talk. It sounds so simple. It's an overused phrase, but it is the most important thing in leadership and management. Remember, people are watching us. They watch everything we do. Never expect people to follow your lead if you're not willing to do the same. If you're not willing to walk the talk, why should they? And find trusted advisors who will tell you when they don't think you're walking it. With, Jane, you said X, Y, and Z, but your behaviors over here look like A, B, C. That doesn't match up. You don't need to agree with them, but at least it clues you in what the perceptions are and how you need to project differently. Get your hands dirty. Know your business so that you can guide, lead, and jump in when necessary. That's really important. There was a time when, early in my career, I did claims adjudication, customer service. We were a small health plan. I did whatever the heck they needed me to do. And as I became more senior in my roles, we were working on a high-level process improvement workflow. And somebody needed help with claims adjudication details. I thought they were going to fall over when I could start rattling off this. And the fact that I could genuinely help at various levels. So know your business. You don't need to know every detail. You just need to know how to find the answers. But you need to know enough to be credible. Listen to your team. You hired them for their brains and for all their experiences. So let them use it. How many times do we hire people and we say, check your brains at the door? This is the way we do things here. Don't do that. Your teams have different personalities and they're going to approach problems and solutions differently than you would. But who cares? That's where creativity comes in. That's where inspiring comes in. That's where letting them learn and grow comes in. There was a time at one company that I worked at that they had a great idea about how to integrate technology into some process flows. And these are all real diehard tech people. And the more they're talking, the more I'm getting lost. But they had it figured out that we could hire a new employee, log them into the system, and it would go all the way through, so a desktop would be waiting for them on the day they arrived. Now, this doesn't sound like anything to any of you, but I'm talking 25 years ago when that stuff just wasn't done. So the team had an idea. I rolled my eyes. And then I realized, you know what, they're so excited about it, and they know a heck of a lot more about technology than I know. So I asked a lot of questions. I challenged them all along the way. They had answers to everything. They had thought things through. So my role was to provide air cover and let them do it. It was one of the most successful deployments of usable technology we had ever done in that company. And it was all infrastructure work, which people don't like. So again, a good lesson for me. Take responsibility. When something goes wrong, what's your obligation? Michelle, you have an example you're going to share.
Yeah, so in one of the clients, or with one of the clients that we were working with at CoreTech, there was a resource that whenever something would go wrong, the go-to response for this particular person was to try and figure out whose fault it was. And so this person would just dig and dig and dig and try to get to the bottom of whose fault it was. I finally, as part of the coaching that I was working with this organization on, had to pull this person aside and say, when something's going wrong in the midst of that crisis, whatever that situation is, that is not the time to try and figure out whose fault it is. What you want to do in that moment is solve the problem. Come together as a team. Go, I know something went wrong here. Let's figure out what went wrong, why it went wrong, fix it, and move forward. Later, if necessary, you can figure out why and whose fault it was and do a lessons learned to learn and grow from it. But trying to find someone to point a finger at is not a productive way to run your team, to run your organization. And so I just had to pull this person aside, walk them through that, and continue to coach them along the way on how to change that behavior so that their team could grow and become a stronger team as a result.
So our roles as leaders is to inspire our team. Let the team do their thing. And I bet you will have success that exceeds your expectations. You'll do things you never dreamed were possible in your organization. So can you observe your teams and see if there are problems? Ask yourself some of these questions. Are there silos and conflicts between departments? Do you have high turnover or attrition rates? Are you closed to new ideas? Because this is the way we do things here. Are you or the leader visible? Are your employees not developed? They don't know how to do new things? Is the staff micromanaged? Is no one asking questions? Are accidents allowed? Is compassion lacking? Is respect demanded and not created? Is impulse control lacking? And do you hear more me or more we? Look in the mirror. This is really, really hard because we all want to say, no, none of this happens on my team. The reality is all of this happens to all of us at different stages, and it's how we handle it and what do we do. Michelle, you have a good example of a smart leader.
Yeah, so one of the clients I was working with a few years back for a project that I was working on, she was an incredibly intelligent person, one of the smartest people I've had the pleasure of meeting or working with. But at some point, it became clear to me that her team, they were afraid of her. She often led with fear. She would belittle others who were in the room with her. She would belittle vendors. It was very difficult. And so at some point in our time together, I had to pull her aside, and actually she approached me and said, why don't people like me? Why aren't they responding to me? And so I had to have this conversation with her that was very difficult. And I said, well, sometimes we have to ask ourselves the difficult questions. Am I the problem? Am I the reason why people are struggling around me? Is this organization a fit for me? Is this culture a fit for me? Is my style, too different from the other people who work here? Kind of going back to the CVI we've mentioned before, understanding who you are, what your strengths are and your weaknesses, what areas you operate from, to just try and grow and figure out what's the best fit for you. And, I didn't by any means go on to tell her any of the things like, hey, you belittle people or anything like that. I just kind of coached her in a roundabout way. And as an opportunity presented itself, she went on to move into a different role in a different organization that is a much better fit for her. But, being that person who leads by fear and leads by putting other people down is never a good place to be. And so sometimes you have to ask yourself, what are my weaknesses and how can I improve so that others around me will also grow?
I had an opportunity to work with another client, a similar situation where the department director, extremely intelligent. She was a nurse with a PhD, all kinds of management credentials, but had no compassion for her team whatsoever. She was one of those people who expected respect or demanded respect because of her title and her position, but did very, very little to earn it. My stint there was only 3 months. In the time I was there, her team turned over 100%. And she never saw it. She kept complaining to me about how she had all these horrible people working for her. Fortunately for me, I was hired by her boss who asked what the heck was going on. And I could share some of it and tried to share it in a helpful way, tried to coach this director who wanted nothing to do with it. And shortly thereafter, the director was invited to find another opportunity. Because people do see what's happening, which is why it's so important for us to look in the mirror and figure out what can we correct. We can't tackle everything all at once, but we can chip away at things. This isn't easy. And sometimes an outside perspective is very helpful. One recent client hired us to make their technology run better. That was the charge that they gave us. What it really turned into were that there were fractions within the organization. There was too much technology in the organization that people didn't know how to use. It was confusing. And there was confusion over leadership. And so by bringing in somebody with a different perspective, those things are much more apparent because you're not necessarily emotionally involved. It's not the position that makes the leader. It's the leader that makes the position. And I think we've been saying this throughout this webinar and the previous one. So hopefully, by listening to this webinar, you see how leading and managing more effectively impacts your employees. We hope that you've learned a few tips on how to be a stronger leader and manager. And we have discussed how to effectively lead others, how personalities play a role in the leadership process, both leader and employee personalities. We've talked about characteristics of a good leader and how to identify problems within your team.
And we realize that during this particular webinar, we've only begun to scratch the surface on these topics. We also know that this information can be overwhelming. There's so much here. We could probably pick one topic of all the many things we've covered today and just dig in for an hour on that one particular area. And so it's hard to understand, where do I even start to make some of these improvements? Do I start with myself? Do I start with training my employees? Do I start by giving, the personality assessments such as like the CVI or DISC or Myers-Briggs? Do I start, giving that to my team? Do I work on figuring out where problems inside my team sit and where to resolve those problems? And it's just so easy to take all that information and get completely overwhelmed. And so we just want you to walk away remembering that you are not alone. CoreTech has worked with leaders of organizations of all different sizes, and we're here to help you too. We can help you personally, we can help you and your team get to the next level, we can help your organization get to the next level. And so if you want to sit down and have a conversation with either Jane or I about what that would look like or how to take those next steps, we are here to help you get started. And in the meantime, if you haven't already done so, we really encourage you to personally take the CVI and get those results for yourself, and sign up for the next webinar, session 3, where we're going to dig in even a little deeper to these leadership challenges. And if you have any questions, we're going to stick around for the next few minutes on the webinar to answer them. Feel free to put those into the chat window and we can review them. If not, thank you so much for your time. We're so excited you joined us today, and we look forward to chatting with you again during our 3rd webinar. Have a great day.